In the world of InfoSec, a threat actor is any individual or entity that carries out an attack. And not all threat actors are the same. They all have different motives, attributes, and attack characteristics. For example, a single hacker trying to exploit a vulnerability is going to have a completely different attack profile than an organized crime group waging an assault on your network. Because of this, it's your job to understand the different types of threat actors that exist so you can better protect your systems. The first thing you need to be aware of is the difference between an opportunistic attack and a targeted attack. Let's start by looking at the less dangerous of the two, an opportunistic attack. With an opportunistic attack, the threat actor is almost always trying to make money as fast as possible and with minimal effort. And because hiding your tracks and presence is very time-consuming, the attacker usually won't bother. They simply want to get in, grab the goods, and get out. Think of it as the smash and grab of cyber attacks. An opportunistic attack is usually automated and involves scanning a wide range of systems for known vulnerabilities, such as old software, exposed ports, poorly secured networks, default configurations, and so on. When one is found, the attacker will exploit the vulnerability, steal what they need, and get out. A common example of an opportunistic attack is ransomware. An attacker will gain access to a system, plant a virus that encrypts all user data, and demand a payment for decrypting the data. The best way to protect against opportunistic attacks is to follow security best practices. Keep systems up to date, close all unused ports, disable unused services, etc. A targeted attack, on the other hand, is much more dangerous and, to be completely honest, impossible to defend against. A targeted attack is extremely methodical and often carried out by multiple entities that have substantial resources. The main goal of a targeted attack is to do damage, for example, leak sensitive information or destroy important data. Targeted attacks almost always use unknown exploits and go to great lengths to cover their tracks and hide their presence. Targeted attacks also use completely new programs written from the ground up that are specifically designed for the target. One example of a targeted attack is Stuxnet. Stuxnet is a malicious computer worm that was specifically designed to target only SCADA systems. It was created to target industrial centrifuges used by the Iranian nuclear program. Stuxnet's code was so large and complex that it would have required huge amounts of funding and resources to create. Even though targeted attacks are next to impossible to protect against, it doesn't mean you should throw in the towel. It's still beneficial to protect your network and minimize your attack surface as much as possible to make it that much harder for an attacker to succeed. Now that we know the two main types of attacks, let's take a look at the different types of threat actors. The first one we'll look at is insiders. Insiders are one of the most dangerous types of threat actors, and often they're the most overlooked. Now, when we say insider, we can be talking about a customer, a janitor, or even a security guard. But most of the time, we're talking about an employee. And employees pose one of the biggest threats to any organization. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying all employees are bad. However, you still need to look at them as potential threats and take the appropriate actions to prevent them from becoming actual threat actors and exploiting a vulnerability. There are a lot of different reasons for an employee becoming a threat actor. The employee could be disgruntled and motivated by a personal vendetta. The employee might want to make money. Maybe they've been bribed to steal information, or they could be working alone and decide to steal customer credit card information. Both of these reasons require the employee to make a conscious effort to carry out an attack. However, sometimes an employee can become a threat actor without them even knowing. This is known as an unintentional threat actor. They create security breaches doing what they think is harmless day-to-day work. And an unintentional threat actor is the most common insider threat. See, because the unintentional threat actor has no idea they're doing anything wrong, they'll continue to compromise the organization in ignorance. This means that any employee has the potential to become an unintentional threat actor. The key point to remember is that insiders typically have easier access to company information and assets than someone on the outside who's trying to break in, making them a much more dangerous threat. Another type of threat actor is a competitor. I know I'm stating the obvious, but business is competitive, and sometimes that competition causes organizations to cross the line and use corporate espionage to try to get information from competitors. And when I say corporate, I'm not necessarily talking about giant corporations. These tactics can be used on nonprofit companies, private companies, and even smaller companies. There are two tactics used in corporate espionage. The first tactic is internal. In this case, a competitor hires a spy that gets a job at your company. This new employee then exploits any internal vulnerabilities they can find and steals information for their client. The second tactic is external. This is where the competitor hires a spy to attack a company from the outside by exploiting any external vulnerabilities that exist and, again, returns the information to their client. The next threat agent that you need to be aware of are hackers. Now, the term hacker is kind of a broad, generic term that tends to be applied to many different categories of threat agents. But generally speaking, and for our purposes here, a hacker is any threat agent who uses their technical knowledge to bypass security, exploit a vulnerability, and gain access to protected information. There are a lot of different reasons why a hacker becomes a threat agent, but the most common reason is for attention. Instead of seeking financial gain or revenge, they just want the bragging rights and to be able to say, I did that. And this ties into the next reason, which is for the thrills. Some hacker threat agents get a thrill out of knowing they can get past security measures and gain access to a system. They might not even do anything malicious after they gain access. Another reason, of course, is criminal. The threat agent wants to gain access to your information to receive some type of reward. This reward could be financial, political, or something else entirely. Hackers themselves come in a lot of different flavors. That is, their motives and labels are different. For example, some hackers call themselves hacktivists. These are hackers that have a political motive and are usually out to disrupt governments, large corporations, or other entities that oppose their political views. Another is a script kiddie. Now, script kiddies aren't hackers in the traditional sense. As their name implies, they're kind of like the kids of the hacking world. Script kiddies will use applications or scripts written by much more talented individuals to attack systems or compromise devices. The last type of hacker threat agent is known as a white hat hacker. A white hat hacker is actually a good guy who tries to help a company see the vulnerabilities that exist in their security. One key attribute all hacker agents share is that they don't want to get caught. Because of this, they take extensive measures to cover up their tracks and make sure that the attack can't be traced back to them. Now, there's actually a subcategory of hacker threat agents, and they could be grouped with corporate spies. These are cyber criminals, and they have some unique aspects that differentiate them from an average hacker. Cyber criminals have unique motivations. Remember, hackers really don't want to get caught. Neither do cyber criminals. However, cyber criminals are willing to take a lot more risks and use more extreme tactics because their motivation is usually a significant financial gain. They try to steal information that has value so they can sell it or use it. For example, they could target banks to steal financial information or a hospital to steal personal information. In addition, they could be seeking revenge against a particular company or political entity. As I said before, cyber criminals tend to be risk takers. They're highly motivated by monetary gain. As such, they tend to be a lot more tenacious than your average hacker. Because the risk of being caught increases the longer an attack takes, the hackers we talked about before usually won't pursue an attack for very long. A cyber criminal, on the other hand, is willing to take more risks because the payoff is a lot higher. A lot of times, cyber criminals are associated with large organized crime syndicates, such as the mafia. The next threat actor we need to look at is nation-states. The days of protecting systems from a lone attacker or small group are gone. In today's world, we have to deal with attacks from other countries, and these are some of the most dangerous external attacks you'll face. Why? Because attacks from nation-states have several key components that make them especially powerful. First, nation-state attacks are highly targeted. They identify a target and wage an all-out war. Second, they are extremely motivated. Third, they use the most sophisticated attack techniques of all the attackers. This often includes developing completely new applications and viruses in order to carry out an attack. And finally, they have a lot of resources and money at their disposal. The reality is, if a nation-state sets its crosshairs on an organization, they're going to infiltrate it no matter what kind of security has been implemented. This is why it is so important as a security professional that you're able to recognize what an attack looks like and what abnormal network traffic or behavior looks like. You need to be able to prevent attacks from occurring, but you also need to identify an attack that has already occurred. One important thing to remember is that the average hacker is usually one person at home trying to figure out ways to get into a system, and if things get too risky, they back off. However, cybercriminals and nation-states may spend several years formulating an attack and conducting reconnaissance before executing the exploit.